All right, welcome to another episode of Comic Book Squares. We're going to be talking to another artist today. My name is Shane.
I'm Paul.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike. Let's get this show started.
All right, Steven, welcome to the show. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody about your book?
All right, thanks for having me on. My name is Steve Prince. I am the writer and creator of Monster Matador, a post-apocalyptic kaiju throwdown about a matador who fights monsters to make a better world for his daughter.
Very
and
cool.
It's as wild and crazy as it sounds.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I read through it to get prepared for the show, and it's
cool.
really, the artwork is really cool. I love the style that you went with, and yeah, the characters are really great. Yeah, I mean everything about it is really fun. I know Ben's chomping at the bit to talk about it.
He's like, all right.
So, go for it, Ben. Go for it, Ben.
I mean, I ordered when we first started the show. I was like going through, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get into more, because I was buying like Image or Vault or a few other ones, but I was like, I'm gonna get some more indie comics, and I picked up yours. I bought, and just from the premise, I bought the whole package.
Yeah.
All of them, and oh my gosh, it's like, actually, Shane, you said this when we were talking about it a little bit, like Predator, but meets kaiju, like just because of the different characters, and you have like I love the different characters. Each one was kind of just had the distinct characteristics and attitude and everything, and then the Matador is just I don't know, it was really fun. So I love the story. After Apocalypse, and I hope this doesn't give anything away, like we bring in like a type of zombie, monster now they got to fight. It's like I love where you're going with the series. Are you looking at new avenues for the Matador to come back and fight some more monsters?
Yeah. So we I'll touch upon a few things you guys mentioned, but we're gonna do. We just did the Kickstarter for a trade, and then we're gonna do a serialized story coming up called Once Upon Some Monsters in Mexico, where the Matador is going to return to Mexico, reunite with his daughter, and basically the shit's going to hit the fan. And it's a kind of a longer form story of them kind of traveling across Mexico, not just fighting monsters, but fighting, what I say in the book, it's monsters of all kinds. So there's a cartel that they come up against. There's monster fighting luchadors that join him. It just gets wilder and wilder. We're looking at. I have a partner, a business partner. We're looking at getting the book into stores. We're reaching out to publishers, but we'll see. It's kind of a tricky thing with rights and everything, and that's a lot of us indie guys do indie for a reason.
Right.
But it's interesting you mentioned the art, because Fabio Alves, who's the artist, he did a book called Banjax from Action Lab that's been nominated for Ringo Awards. He was nominated for a Ringo Award for his cover work, and he was not my first choice of artist for that book. Actually went two artists kind of didn't work out, and my intent originally was to have a more cartoony style.
Oh.
And then Fabio became available. I'm friends with Ryland Grant, who writes who wrote Banjax, and he's like, "Oh, why don't you use Fabio?" And I was like, "I don't know. That's not really what I want for the book. It's not really what I was thinking about." And then I was looking at Banjax again. I'm like, "Well, I'd be stupid not to get this right." But then he sent the layouts, he started drawing the book, and it's just like something just clicked, and I'm just like, oh, wait a minute, this is actually what the book should be about. Because even though I had humor in the script, the way he brings out those moments, he plays it sometimes so straight that the humor just like it's almost like that's where the humor comes from.
Right.
That's where, and it doesn't have to be this over the top funny, it's just this kind of like, okay, because at the end of the day, you have to make it believable enough that you believe that Matador is actually fighting these kaiju. And part of that is having that kind of tongue in cheek thing going, hey, like we're being serious, but wink, wink. And I think his art kind of brings that balance to it, as opposed to it just being this kind of over the top sort of like, hey, look how funny we are, look how. So it's interesting how that kind of worked out.
I think
I mean the artwork would have made the story dramatically different if if you would have went more cartoony style. That would have shifted the entire tone of the book. So, it's one of those happy accidents sometimes that happen where the artwork just comes together in the right way it was supposed to fall into place. So you went with the right choice.
Yeah, and I didn't change the script at all too. I was just like, let me see what he does with this. And that was Tango the Matadors. Afropocalypse I wrote specifically for him. But by that point, I kind of knew what he was doing, so I could tailor it. I could still, there's a lot of humor in it, but now I knew like visually, like, okay, I know how he's going to interpret this.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun.
I love that juxtaposition too, and it goes back to like those again. I can't. After Shane said that about Predator, I was like, oh my god, that's what I love about it so much. I think is like the '80s action movies, right?
Yeah,
where there is that little bit of humor, but everybody's playing it straight, the whole time, and I think that's what does make those funny moments break the tension and feel more realistic. Does that make sense? Yeah. I like that.
But Afropocalypse was definitely a love letter to Predator.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
That was definitely intentional there. But you say 80s action movies. That's Tango the Matadors was like my canon films. Those just that was like the intent is that just balls to the wall, like hit the ground running action straight through. I try to do a different.
It came through.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I try to do a different theme for each story because just to keep it interesting. So like I said, like the next one is the Matador has to face his greatest fear, which is a giant cockroach. That's his. But it's I mean, this is great. There's monster fighting luchadors. There's this giant. I mean, it just gets nuts. But that's part of the fun is that you can just, you can just go crazy with it. And I've been really focusing on doing these kind of shorter bursts. Tango was 3 issues. Afropocalypse was 65 pages. This next one, it'll be a longer form series, but it's like stories within stories. So it's not like you don't have to wait 6 issues for a monster fight, right? Because you don't want to wait 6 issues to get to the monster. I mean, let's be honest about why we're reading Monster Matador, okay? So for me, it's very intentional. Like I really like the action is really but there's a lot of character work in there, but I try to do it through the action because I feel like if you're reading a kaiju book, right, you're there for the kaiju. No one goes to Godzilla, the hour and a half that they spend in like conference rooms and talking and whatever. You're just like, all right, dude, when's he going to step on something? But we don't have to worry about a budget. So we could just do what we want. So.
I don't know. You could do the next one where it's just Monster Matador and the team, like just with tons of exposition for like one episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Sitting in a conference room planning how they're going to do the next.
Talking about
a lot of PowerPoint.
Right, really planning it out. That's a good one. You could spend a few pages on him trying to figure out PowerPoint
presentations.
Yeah, exactly.
His greatest fear is public speaking.
He just stands up there for it's one of those Bendis pages where he's just like, and then like 5 silent panels. It's the same panel. Another page of that.
God. Oh my god,
I love it. Well, the one thing for me that really stood out that something that I just absolutely loved was, your introduction of the team. And I love how diverse and from all over the world that the team was. I thought that was just really cool. Was that intentional on your part to kind of bring the world into this piece?
Yeah. So that's Afropocalypse. So I really wanted to kind of open the world and be like, hey, there's this bigger universe here and there's a lot. There's other monsters because a lot of times in these you just focus on the micro, the one character, and the Matador isn't like, he's not like, you know, the Luke Skywalker, you know, that's not his goal in this. His goal is a very focused thing of, hey, I just want to fight these monsters to make the world better for our daughter. And what Afropocalypse shows is that there are other people fighting these monsters, and there are other people doing the whole, hey, we're trying to figure this out. So those worlds are going to intersect and interconnect. But, you know, the Matador's story is very specific. But it was just to show that, yeah, there is a bigger world out there that, you know, ultimately, like with these monster fighting luchadors, we're going to spin that off. We're going to do a thing with them, and that'll kind of open things up more. It's just, you know, just kind of peeling back those layers. But I didn't want to do a story of like, okay, because that's typically every story, kaiju story is like, oh, where do the monsters come from? Why are they here? Why are they? Yeah. And that's cool. That's fun. But I just, you know, for this, it was like, no, dude, you've got a Matador who's fighting monsters. That's like, and what you'll see in the next one too is that it brings in this conflict with his daughter, and that becomes interesting because it's like, as a parent, you're like, how do I protect my kid from the world, right? And as they get older, you realize you can't, and that's where a lot of that tension comes in. So that kind of brings out, because she's like, I want to fight monsters like my dad, which you see a little bit of in Tango, the Matadors, and he's like, no, I don't want you to be part of this world. Because Matador means killer, right? So that's what he is. He's a killer, and he's very conscious of the fact that that's what he does, and he wants to keep her innocence. So that's kind of the story that we're telling.
Yeah,
very cool.
I love that.
Yeah. Getting deep now, guys. We're
getting real deep. I love it. That's good. That's good.
No, but I love that depth. I mean, that's important, right? I mean, because if it's you know, we talk about, well, harkening back to those 80s action movies, they're pretty surface level, the heroes but I love that you added some more let off some steam. I mean, that's what, you know, those kind of movies were you know, very surface level characters. I liked how you added more depth to you know, to the Matador, and even in Afropocalypse, how you added some more depth to some of the other characters and stuff. You know, you managed to in 64 pages. So yeah, kudos to you on the writing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, awesome, thank you. That's something like it's one of the things I really tried to work hard on. So I'm glad it worked. But even though we have a lot of characters in there and there are these tight stories, we try to give each character an arc. You know, and not really have, even though some of them are small, some of them are bigger, but they're not just like, I didn't want anyone to just be like, okay, they're just there in the background to get killed off.
Yeah.
You know, so you kind of feel like, okay, these characters have an arc, so maybe they're not just going to get killed off right away. They're not just cannon fodder, because they are kind of maybe leading towards something.
Yeah. Well, it ups the stakes when you know, they are in danger. Exactly. Now you care about them.
Yeah.
They're not a red shirt like in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Red shirt. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
So, just curious, what made you choose a Matador as your kind of lead? It's just kind of a really unique.
It's
I mean, he definitely stands out from the rest of the crew for sure.
Yeah. It's so I've always had a thing for Matadors. When I was a kid, my grandfather gave me a Matador hat. I guess going way back, he's got Spanish blood, so I guess that was a way to kind of be like, hey. But I've always been kind of interested by it, and I had this period. There's a Peter Sellers movie called The Bobo, which he plays the greatest singing matador in all of Spain.
Okay.
And I was kind of obsessed with that movie for a while. And I was in this period where I was just writing, all my stories involved matadors for some reason.
All right.
I wrote about, I had a medical matador. I had all this different, and
Nice.
Yeah.
Is that issue coming out later?
Yeah, it'll be a spin. It's one of the spin-offs we're doing. Yeah. It changes the world, man. You know.
Hey, doctor, I've got this growth. Stand back. I got my sword.
right. Yeah. You know, banker matadors coming.
Yes, banker matador. That's so awesome.
And but I was literally just sitting around with a sketchbook one day, being like, okay, I'm going to come up with a character. I'm going to come up with, like, you know, Batman or something like that. I had Matadors on my mind, and the name just popped, Monster Matador, and I was like, oh, that's pretty. That's it's just as a name, it's cool, but it was the kind of thing where it's like it just kind of writes itself. Mm-hmm. And this is interestingly enough, this is back in like 2007 or 2008 that I did it, that I had come up with it. Oh. And the comic industry was a very different place back then, and it wasn't as easy to just kind of go online, get an artist. I mean, you could, but you were also kind of like it wasn't as like. I don't know if DeviantArt or all those places were really up and running to the point where it was like you can, you were basically throwing a Hail Mary. And I knew, I felt like I had something with it, and I wanted to do the right thing with it. And again, independent publishers, it wasn't really like now where, I mean, Boom, I think, was just starting. So it was a really kind of nascent sort of thing. So I just kind of held it in my pocket. And it was one of those things where I'm like, well, somebody had to have done this already, right?
Right.
But they hadn't. And I was like not wanting to tell anyone about it because I'm like, it's the most obvious. I mean, it's like the most obvious thing, right? Like a Matador is fighting. It's just like, and then like, I used to work in the toy industry, and I got laid off, and I had a lot of time on my hands. So I started making comics, and I did these other things, and I was like, well, why don't I do Monster Matador? So I actually wrote and drew. I meant to just write and draw 1 or 2 issues just to kind of like work out the concept or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then my wife got pregnant, so I just didn't have time. So I just kept drawing, and then one thing would lead to another. And I'm like, well, after the kid comes out, I'll have all this time. Yeah. And that's not what happens. No. So, all
the
and
free
then
time after having a kid,
all the free, and then I didn't do anything. Then I literally didn't do anything for like. And the plan was always to get another artist to do it. It was never meant to be me doing it because I'm not like that good of an artist. And anyway, long story short, I had another kid, and I thought, oh, I've got this because I had one, and the second one will be like.
It'll get easier.
No. Anyway, 12 issues later, I literally did, which is nuts, right? And but it was fun. But it was like a complete. It was fun, and then I finally, they were old enough. It's okay. I've got to do this, and I got the scripts written, and it was. But the timing was perfect because. It wouldn't have been Fabio. It's just with this kind of stuff, it's like so much, and everything just kind of fell into place. It was like, because to me, it's like, I don't know, like I can't see it. I can't see those stories without Fabio doing them. And it's just, it worked out, however many years later,
That was meant to be. I mean, it was meant to all click right when it did.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The kids thing was smart because that just wasted 5 years to get to the point where
wasted.
I needed to just I needed that guy. I needed to just like I needed an excuse to have a fun.
Please don't show your children this episode. Please.
I can't. I'm kidding.
Don't let them watch this. Dad's not on YouTube.
I love my kids, but 2 or 3 years of changing diapers is not really like the most productive thing you could be doing, in terms of like, but anyway, so it worked out. And, those 12-ish, so, Tango it sort of picks up from that, but it's what I call it is a soft reboot, soft relaunch. And we're going to be weaving those old stories into the new stories. We're going to be retelling the origin because the way I did it was very simplistic. So it kind of, I kind of want to do it again. But with Tango, that opening scene, he's being carried in by the monster. It's sort of like you're carrying the readers being carried into the story, dropped in, hit the ground, and so that was kind of very purposeful because I just kind of wanted to be like, okay, I'm just throwing you in here,
Yeah. No, I appreciated that part of it.
Like, don't worry about it. Yeah.
I appreciated that part because, well, as you pointed out, the kaiju book, show me some kaiju right off the bat, and then, but just dropping you in because then you could save the, you can have your flashbacks and all that stuff. But exactly, I loved how we just get right to fighting monsters.
Right. Yeah. I was very, because I kind of was looking at some of the other monster books and what they were doing, and it was like, okay, where's the monsters, you know?
Right.
Or the monsters there. But you know what I noticed, a lot of it too, and obviously, I mean, there's reasons for it, but they're not actually fighting the monster, right? It's more about like PowerPoint presentations and, you know, sitting in meetings trying to figure out, you know, how do we get the monster into this thing? So, and it's funny with the book is that, like, I'll go to conventions or signings and, you know, people will be like, well, what's the book about? And it's like, well, it's about a monster, a monster fighting Matador, you know? And I can't tell you how many people will come back and be like, oh, I want to get the rest. I'm like, I read it last night and it's about a Matador who fights monsters. I'm like, yeah, that's what I said. No, but he really fights monsters. I'm like, yeah, no, that's the book. And it's a weird thing because it and I get it because, like, it's like, wait a minute, you know, you're talking about kaiju and a guy, and that's kind of part of the fun because what a Matador does, it's all about precision, right? He's got to find that one spot or that one, because he only gets one shot. Otherwise, you know, the bull's going to get pissed and whatever. So, and it's been kind of interesting. So in terms of marketing and selling the book, because no matter how many times I say it's about a Matador who fights monsters, there's like a weird disconnect of like, oh, okay, I get it. It's a monster book with a Matador in it. And then they read it, they go, oh no, it's actually a Matador who fights monsters. So yeah.
They don't believe you.
Yeah, they don't believe it. How is that possible? You know,
Right. I've been
telling
tricked
you
before.
what it is.
Yeah.
People have fooled me before. There was
Right.
monsters in that.
It'd be monsters.
Yeah.
Not till issue 6.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's going to be him learning how to become a Matador for 5 issues.
Right,
And then-
yeah. Training, yeah.
Wax on, wax off.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So
go
what,
ahead.
I'm sorry, man. I just want to find out. So, what made you decide to move from the toy world into making a comic book?
I was just I mean, I've always done comics. I've always loved comics, and I've always made my own comics. I stopped for a long time. I kind of, like everyone, you kind of fall out of comics a little bit.
Yeah.
You just kind of grow out of stuff, and I was still reading, but not as much. And it was my roommate at the time who was pushing me, kind of like, because I was introducing her to like Paul Pope and like comics like that. And she was an artist, and she kept pushing me because I used to draw, and she's like, you know, you should draw. So that's where the Matadors, you know, sitting with the sketchbook came from. So she was kind of encouraging me. So that's how I kind of like got back into comics. And then when I got laid off, I needed something to do to kind of like fill the day, you know, while you're looking for a job. Everyone's like, oh, you need to look for a job. But it's like, dude, looking for a job is not like, you know, a 24-hour thing, right? It's like, I mean, it really isn't. As much as people who have jobs seem to want to like make it that way sometimes.
Right. You can only send out so many resumes, and then
yeah, it's only so much you can do. So I needed something to kind of fill the time. So I did a web comic, like a comic strip called Unemployant, which was about an ant who loses his job.
Unemployed ant. Nice.
Yeah, and that I did like 150 of those or something like that. And yeah, but it was more like, because you know, just to kind of get back to drawing and kind of, and then I did something. Then I did this. I went a little nuts. I did this 200-page science fiction graphic novel.
Oh dang!
Wow,
I'm an idiot. I'm not a smart person.
Why?
Why?
Why are you saying you're an idiot now?
No.
That's a big undertaking.
It's a big no, but it was more like, it was, you know, it really kind of, no, but what it was I just like, I found that passion for comics again, which is nice, you know.
That's important.
And I got really excited about it, and that's when I went back to Matador, because I always felt like there was something there, and I was like, okay, I'm ready for this. I'm ready to kind of, and it's been a fun journey. So, but that's kind of where it came from.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Like, So, sorry. When you were starting, so you did the web comic, and then with the sci-fi one, did you crowdfund that as well? Is that
No, I know that was on. I just did. It was on Comixology. This was
okay.
So yeah. This was around when Kickstarter was just starting, and I was looking at Kickstarter. But at that time there was a bit of a lot of negativity around it because a lot of people were running campaigns or they weren't being fulfilled.
Oh yeah.
And it was still this kind of touch and go sort of thing. And it wasn't until I think a few years later, people like Pat Chan, Charlie Stickney, people like that, Russell Nohelty, like professionals, really started coming in and utilizing that platform, and that started, and it became more of a, like anything at the beginning, people are still trying to figure out what it is and how to do it, because like people are suddenly being thrown into the fire of like, okay, now I got to get a printer, and I get it, now I got to get a printer, I got to ship all this stuff, but now you go into it and there's a big enough community and whatever where it's like, we all lean on each other, and it's like, hey, how do I ship this? And it's like Gemini mailers. I need a printer. And not just, about printing. It's about like, I need a reliable printer,
Yeah.
So it's and now Kickstarter is, it's a legitimate platform. And it used to have, the thing where, it's just amateurs or whatever, but people are now, oh no, Kickstarter is like kind of where you go because, publishing is a weird thing. Okay. And the comic industry is a really weird industry and not like the best industry for creators. So depending on what you're doing, what your goals are, how you're doing it, Kickstarter might be the best way. Kickstarter could be a place to start something before going to a publisher, and, publishers themselves are, telling creators, go to Kickstarter and then we'll publish your book, because it's, the dirty secret is that, comics don't really pay a lot if they pay at all.
Mm-hmm.
So Kickstarter has become a place where you can at least raise funds, to get, to be able to pay, your collaborators, to get some money flowing in, to get a print run and things like that. So it's become so it's like I say, it's a legitimate, Kickstarter, I think they've said now is kind of, it's like the third largest publisher, if you would consider it a publisher of comics.
That's
behind
crazy.
Marvel and DC. And it keeps, and now you've got Zoop, now you've got Crowdfunder. So it's becoming, a space where enough material has come out and enough where people are like, oh, okay, no, this is actually like good stuff. This is the same level. And not only that, you're competing against people who are putting out, stuff that's a level of quality of Scout, DC, you know what I mean? So like when you read White Ash, when you get a book from Charlie or whoever, that's no different than anything you're going to get from Boom or whatever. So like, if you kind of have to step up your game. So, with Monster Matador, like you look at an artist like Fabio, he's a Ringo Award winner. Our colorist Alex Zeff she colors Cult of Dracula for Source Point Press.
Oh.
So it's become a place too where professionals are it's no longer like, I think the impression of Kickstarter used to be it's just some people making comics and throwing it out there, but it's like a legitimate now kind of publishing and platform for comics, and it's being taken a lot more seriously, especially by publishers who are now looking at Kickstarter and picking up books directly from there because it's a great R&D for them.
Yeah. Well, I've even seen some like some of the publishers take some of their stuff and go direct to Kickstarter. Like I saw Asylum Press was doing that, or a few other ones.
Boom.
I was surprised. I was like, oh wow, they went straight there. But like you were saying, it's probably a good way to test out a title, see if there's interest, and then if not, they're not losing too much. If like if there's a title that they're like, the direct market is also kind of challenging because
most stores, for what sells is Marvel and DC, right? Mm-hmm. And that's at least for the time, for foreseeable future, that's where their bread and butter is. And admittedly, there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff, and Kickstarter, in a lot of ways, is a way for a small title to get a bigger audience or more hype around it than just sticking it in the previews catalog.
Right.
Because you could build a hype around. I mean, Top Cow did the Cyberforce hardcover in there. And I grew up in, Cyberforce is a really cool book, and I got excited about that. I mean, that was cool. But I can tell you, if they had thrown like Cyberforce in the Diamond catalog, I probably wouldn't have noticed. You know what I mean? But I think it was kind of like a lot of people like me who were like, oh yeah, Cyberforce. Yeah. And you've got this campaign, and, it's signed by Silvestri, and there's all this stuff. It's a way to kind of, I'm like, I'm a sucker. You got me, So for certain titles like that, it's a good way for publishers to really kind of like, also, if you announce like, hey, Cyberforce is coming back next month or whatever, you're probably going to get a tiny article and no one's going to whatever. But if you've got a Kickstarter, now you've got this hype machine for a month around the book.
Yeah.
So you can't do it for everything, but for, for certain things like that, and they did, I think 200 or 300 grand on that or something. So.
Damn. There you go.
Nice. Very cool.
Well, I mean, they brought back Cyberforce. I did love that too.
Yeah. I mean,
it's back in the day. So that makes sense that it did so well, because that was awesome.
Yeah.
That's what, I've seen like so many, bigger names like using Kickstarter now, like James Tinian, who, he's Something's Killing the Children, like all this stuff. He just crowdfunded a movie on there.
Yeah. So yeah.
Did you see that one?
Yeah, I saw. Yeah.
Crazy how people, all these big names in comics now are utilizing, crowdfunding. But well, that's all well and good. I still try to, unless like there's the Cyber Forces in there, but I still try to use Kickstarter mostly to find smaller unknown folks, because it's just, I don't know. Those are the people who kind of need the hype build up for them.
Yeah, but it's also, it's also the books are unique in the sense of like, it really is stuff that you're not getting in the direct market. There's a lot of sameness to what's in stores, to what gets published. Yeah. And it's fun kind of, like you said, like seeing creators kind of do these wild concepts that might, like I'm more than happy to back like an interesting fail, like someone who's kind of like, taking a chance on something that might not be the most mainstream thing or whatever, and might not be able to pull it off, but that's more interesting to me, And I'm excited always to fund creators like that.
I 100% agree. Yeah, I mean, when you're inside of a more corporate environment like a Marvel or a DC, you've got so many eyes looking at a piece, and if for example, your piece, you might bring that up at, hey, I'd like to do Matador, Monster Matador, and they'd be like, I don't think there's an audience for that. So like when you go to indie, like there's no other outside voices telling you what can and can't be done. It's more pure right from your mind to the viewer.
And here's
and so you can get really interesting stuff that you definitely won't find at major players.
Yeah, and here's the other thing why I started with Kickstarter, and Pat Chant, who does Destiny New York, made a tweet about this on Twitter. He talks about this a lot with his book. He's done the equivalent since 2015 of about 35 issues of an independent comic series through Kickstarter. He does these, and there is, find me one independent publisher that's carrying a book. I mean, I know James Tinian does some through Boom. Outside of, I mean, James is he does Batman. I mean, but like someone like Pat, who he's got credits, but he's not writing Batman. So are they going to? Is any publisher going to do 35 issues? And one of the reasons why I did Kickstarter is I started noticing a lot of creators, they're doing these indie books. They do 4 issues and then nothing, because the publisher's now moving on to the next thing and the next thing. or they have this 10 or 12 issue story to tell, but they only get 6 issues out of it. And, you know, with Kickstarter, at least I can build a base. I can build, you know, enough content to say, okay, now I've got, you know, 180 a trade paperbacks worth. I don't have to wait before a publisher is saying like, okay, well, you know, maybe we'll get it on their next year or the year. You know, I have a lot more control in terms of how I can get the book out there and do the book, you know, because, you know, a lot of us with these concepts, like they're just, you know, they mean, I mean, I love this book. I don't know what it is about Monster Matador, but I love it. And I just like the thought of losing that control, of being like, okay, now I can't do it anymore because, you know, they don't have a slot in their schedule, or they want to wait till next year, or they want to wait, but you know, so you're seeing a lot of these, and like growing up on, you know, Vertigo books where you had Preacher, you had like you had these like stories and that was part of that's what kept me in comics, was these kind of, and what made me fall out of it was like that kind of went away, right? Everyone was doing 4 issues. So you're doing 4 issues here, 4 issues there. And it's great, but it's just these like little bursts. But I would go to the store every week for Preacher, you know, or for whatever. And I would, you know, that's what kept me in the game. Like that's what's bringing me into stores, you know? And that's what's exciting to me about a lot of the Kickstarter books, is a lot of creators like me who are like, no, I'm going to do these. I'm going to do 5, 6, you know, I'm going to keep this going as long as I can keep it going. And it's fun. It's great to see that.
No, it's awesome.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
It's rough to see, some of these like series that I like or enjoy, just because some of the sales numbers, which is it happens, you know, they get the hype for the first issue, and then by issue 3 or something, the sales numbers are down. So then the publisher's like, well, we're not going to finish it, you know, like I was reading, and now I'm going to feel like it.
Oh
asshole.
yeah, there's been a bunch of books
Starhenge,
like that.
I've been reading Starhenge, for example, and then I saw a tweet from the creator who was like, they have diminishing sales, so it looks like they might not even be able to, you know, finish it. And I was like, that's such a bummer, you know. So being able to crowdfund it keeps you out of that. Also, it keeps you away from having. Because they're like, oh, how does this fit into our thing? And we could make it a movie, and then we can make this a TV show, and then we can. you know, you're not.
Yeah, well, that's I mean, I didn't know that about Starhenge. I've been reading that too, and I know he had a big plan for that. That's surprising to me, because there was a lot of hype around. But you know what's interesting about Starhenge? If he took that to Kickstarter, he'd probably make 3 times as much on it.
See,
than he would, and that's the benefit of Kickstarter, is that, like, and again, like, I mean, Image not so much, but a lot of smaller publishers, you know, they're focused on, okay, are we turning this to a movie? Because we need the thing that we're turning into a movie, that we're turning into this, because that's where we're getting our money from, because we don't know how to sell comics in the direct market. We don't want to market them, because you're the creator going to market them without a budget, you know?
Yeah. So, it's on you. There's
and that's the thing. But this is the thing that drives me nuts about marketing in comics, because I come from a marketing background, is like, number one, it's all on the creator, which is fine. The creator should be marketing comics, right? But if you're a publisher, you should be doing more, like, your marketing shouldn't just consist of an ad and previews, because that's not growing an audience.
Yeah.
You know, it shouldn't be just like an article or an interview in Bleeding Cool, you know.
Yeah.
It's you know, but the focus isn't necessarily on the selling comics. It's getting hype for a comic to get it noticed, get that movie deal, and then go to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole purpose for this show, was to bring awareness to and give it a voice to these, you know, smaller creators that, like you said, you know, it's hard for them to get noticed out there in the crowded field. So,
and I'll take a movie deal.
Yeah, right.
I'm not against it, but what I mean is it's frustrating. You know, okay, with Kickstarter, we're all marketing our books, and it's great, because it's like, you're really seeing that passion, and that's what, like, connects me to it. But there are so many books, like comics, that I'm like, I'll find out about a year later, 6 months later. I'm like, why isn't there anything, like, or you might see an article about it or something, but then nothing else. And it's like, I don't know. It's hard. I don't know. And I get it. Marketing is tough. I mean, it's a big industry. There's a lot of content. It's a very niche art form. Even though we have these big Marvel, the problem is people still think of comics and it's superheroes, right? But
right.
And I really do wish, there was, like a Got Milk thing where a bunch of publishers get together and really do like put some money together and really do a big push to like, hey, this is comics,
Yeah.
Image does some great ads in their books, but they're just in Image books, right? Like the ones, and that's like, it needs to grow out of that, but you need money for that. But it's like publishers are the ones that have more money than the creators.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's frustrating because it's always frustrating where it's like it's a weird thing where comics are still associated as superheroes. And it's fine. I love superhero. I mean, I'm wearing an Avengers jacket. I'm not like, it's not. I'm not knocking. I'm not like, but it's like comics are. It's no different. It's like saying all movies are like horror movies because there are so many horror movies but like movies are so much more. But it's comics. It's a weird thing where there's like maybe it's like so ingrained that comics are for kids, and it really even with all the gains, all the things, it's there's still this like underlying thing of like people are always still surprised when they see something like I don't know, like a Netflix show that's based on like I'm trying to think of one that's not a superhero. Yeah, like Sweet Tooth. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. And they're like. Yeah. Like my wife will watch it, and she loved it. She's like, "Oh, that's a comic." I'm like, "Yes, yes."
Yeah,
that's what my girlfriend said too.
Yeah. She used to work on the DC animated film. She used to market those. She used to be in the marketing for that. So she's aware of it. But like even for her, like DC is like that's comics, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, superheroes,
yeah. There's so many properties out there that people don't realize are based on a comic book. Especially if it's not like you said superhero based. You look at like Road to Perdition. That was based on a comic book. Nobody in their wildest dreams would imagine that came from a comic book source.
Death of Stalin, that movie that came out. Yeah, that was based on that graphic novel as well. Yeah. There's just a ton out there.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Steve, this was just absolutely fantastic getting to chat with you and get to know you better and learn more about your book. And I just absolutely love it. So I'm just really, really happy that you were able to come on the show. And I appreciate you taking the time with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to talk.
Everybody should go on to Steve's website. We'll have the links in the show notes, or if you're watching it on YouTube, it'll be in the description. Go to his website. I'll have the links there for Monster Matador. And other stuff from Steve. And then he mentioned a Kickstarter. By the time this comes out, it'll probably be a little bit after that. So go to the website. You can find books there and keep up with them on Twitter as well. And we'll have the link to that as well.
Yeah. And if you're on Global Comics, there's a free issue on there. You can check it out too. So.
Perfect. That's a good way to get. I mean, there's a kaiju fight right at the beginning. So check it out on Global Comics and you'll get sucked right in.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for tuning in. We really appreciate, artists coming on to our show, and hopefully, you can check their work out. Be sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell so we can keep bringing you content like this, and we'll see you on the next one.